So, Boker Tov, a good moed. Today's daf yomi is Bava Metzia daf Nun Zayin, Bava Metzia 57. We're going to start on Bava Metzia 57a. We're going to start on Bava Metzia 57a, around 3 lines from the top of the page. So the
Good
Gemara
morning.
asks, good morning, good morning. We are starting on Bava Metzia Nun Zayin Amud Aleph, a good moed. So the Daf Yomi tells us 3 lines from the top the following. That we learned in the Mishnah, there are certain categories that the laws of Onah don't apply to Avadim, to slaves, if you sell a slave, to shtaros, to contracts, to karkos, to real estate, and to property involving the temple. So the Gemara now wants to know whether or not this law applies exactly by a sixth where the ona was an overcharge or an underpay by a sixth. There we say it doesn't apply, or even if it's more than that. So do we say under those circumstances that the sale is canceled or the sale still exists? So Amarav Papa, Amarav Chas Abai Rabbi Ami Ona Ein Lahem Bitom Mekach. Ona Ein Lahem Bitom Mekach Yesh Lahem O Ein Lahem, meaning to say, okay, so there's no Ona in these cases, but is there a Bitom Mekach or not? Meaning to say, is the sale totally canceled? So Amarav Nachman, Hadar Amarav Chisda, Pashit Rabbi Ami, that Rabbi Ami answered, oh no, Elam, Bitok Mekach Yeshlam. In these categories where the laws of price fraud doesn't apply, there's no ona, meaning 1/6, but the sale is canceled. If you overpay by too much, Bitok Mekach Yeshlam. Rabbi Yonah Omer Amar, and now Rashi says this is a Milsa Ba'ape Nafshe. We have an independent statement that Rabbi Yonah says, Ahek Desho. So we'll see what it means. And Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Akarkos. That applies to real estate. The Travau Mishmei Rabbi Yochanan. Both of this are saying, Travau Mishmei Rabbi Yochanan Amru. They said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Ona Elam Bitom Elam, that there's no Ona by these cases, but by this case, but Bitom Mekach Yeshlan. But there is the cancellation of the sale. So one of them, i.e., Rabbi Yonah is saying that Rabbi Yochanan is saying that there's no onar by hekdesh, by temple property, but there is bittul mekach. The sale is canceled. Whereas Rabbi Yirmiyah is saying there's no onar by karka, but there is bittul mekach. But there is the cancellation of the sale by real estate. So the Gemara explains, Manda Amar Hekdesh is the one who says that there's cancellation by karka, by hekdesh, by temple property of the sale. Kol shekena karkaos. For sure, it would apply to real estate that the sale will be canceled if the overcharge was greater than a sixth. Or manda amar karkaos, where according to Rabbi Yirmiyah, who says that Rabbi Yochanan said it about real estate, that the sale is canceled, but if it was a temple property, the sale would not be canceled. Kiddush Shmuel, and they follow the position, and Rabbi Yirmiyah is following the position of Shmuel, because what did Shmuel teach us? Amar Shmuel, Hektish Shava Maneh, Shechol Shava Pruta Mechol. Shmuel says that let's say you have something that belongs to the temple that was worth $100 and you want to deconsecrate it, even on something that was just worth a pruta, obviously much less than its actual value. The actual object is worth much more. Nevertheless, we're not going to say that the sale is canceled because the law of Hektish is removed from the laws of Onah. And also, by the law of Hektish, we don't apply the principle of Mekach Tos because we say there can't be a mistake vis-a-vis Hashem. So that's the position. So basically, everyone says that the law of, so basically, according to Rabbi Yonah, he says that the law of Onah does not apply to Hektish, but the laws of Bitul Mekach do apply, and for sure it applies to real estate. Whereas Rabbi Yirmiyah says the laws of Bitul Mekach does not apply to real estate, but to Hektish it does apply. I don't, let me just make sure I said that the right way. That that when it comes to Ona, we say that the laws of Ona don't apply to real estate and hektish. So there's a mistake. There's a machokas about the position of what do we say about bittul mekach, that if you charge more than a sixth by hektish and real estate, that there's a dispute between about what Rabbi Yochanan said. That according to Rabbi Yonah, he says ahekdeshos, meaning to say the laws of Onah don't apply to the temple property, but bittul mekach does apply. And if you say it does apply, and that's Rabbi Yonah's position, whereas Rabbi Yirmiyah says it applies to real estate, the bittul mekach. The one who says it about real estate will say that for sure it applies to the one who says about hektish, i.e. Rabbi Yonah would say for sure applies to real estate as well, that the laws of bittul mekach apply. The one who says it applies to real estate will say that the laws of cancellation of sale does not apply to hektish because there can't be any mistake by hektish, by temple property. So now the Gemara says in that context, we learned in a Mishnah in Tamura, Tanan Hasam. So Rabbi Yochanan himself says about the following Mishnah in Tamura, Emhaya Kodesh Balmum, so that if there was an animal that was hektish, that had a blemish, and then if you want to deconsecrate it, you can redeem it and make it chulin. And even if the animal that you're redeeming it onto, or the value you're redeeming it onto, if is not worth the amount of the money, then it will still be redeemed. And nevertheless, the Mishnah says that you need to give the replacement money between the actual redemption you did for the animal that had the blemish and the actual value of the animal. And Amar Rabbi Yochanan explained, Yad Solechulin Devar Torah, that biblically speaking, it was deconsecrated onto this other animal that was worth much less, or this other object that was worth much less. The laws of hektish, again, we say the laws of price for it don't apply. But tzarcha also dvarim damim, and you need to make up the money midivrehim. But only rabbinically speaking. Biblically speaking, you don't need to make up the money; it's redeemed. Rabbinically speaking, we say you have to make up the difference to the temple. For Yishlakish Amar, that biblically speaking, you have to make up the money that you shorted the temple, because the Torah says erekacha, meaning to say it has to be the value, the real value of the temple. So the Gemara says, the Mayaskina, what are we talking about in our Mishnah in Tamura, where you exchange the animal that was holy for the deconsecrated animal? What's the difference? So if you're going to say that this difference between them was the value of Ona, that there was 1/6 difference between the amount that you redeemed a sacred animal for. Why would Reish Lakish say that in this case where there was a difference of 1/6, you have to make up the difference biblically speaking? But didn't we say explicitly these are the cases where Ona does not apply? Karkos Avadim Sharms and Ekdeshos. It specifically does not apply to the temple property. So how can you say that biblically speaking you have to make up the difference when we just said in our mission that there's no Ona by Hekdesh? So it must be that we're referring to Bitul Mekach. So we're talking about a case where the price fraud that you shorted the temple was more than a sixth. So why would Rabbi Yochanan say B'halim Rabbi Yochanan Sarachas also Damim Divrayim? Why would Rabbi Yochanan say that? Rabbinically speaking, you need to make up the difference. Amar Rabbi Yonah, Rabbi Yonah said that if the fraud was more than a sixth by temple property, you don't need to make it up because there's no mistake by a temple. The Rabbi Yirmiyah says that Rabbi Yochanan referred to real estate, but Akarkos, which are Vamish made the Rabbi Yochanan, Ona Elam Bitul Mekach Yeshem. But both of them said that Rabbi Yochanan says that there's no Ona in this case, but there is the cancellation of the sale, meaning to say that biblically speaking, you have to make up the money. That biblically speaking, it's canceled in that case. So why does he say? How can you say that Rabbi Yochanan says you have to make up the sale? It's only rabbinic, but we just said biblically speaking, according to them, that there's no ona, but there is bitul mekach. So the Gemara says, well, we're going to say bitul mekach. That really we're talking about a case, and our Mishnah is talking about a case of bitul mekach and not ona. The Epoch. We're going to reverse the positions of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says, the Epoch, Rabbi Yochanan or Reish Lakish, and the Reish Lakish or Rabbi Yochanan. I mean to say Rabbi Yochanan is the one who says that Rabbi Yochanan one is the one who say you have to make it up, biblically speaking, and that's like Rabbi Yonah in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. That by hektish, there's biblically speaking, there's bittul mekach min Torah, and Rish Lakish is the one who says that you need to make it up to Rabban. But if that's the case, what's the basis of the dispute between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish? So Rish Lakish says that you need now, according to our current reading of the Gemara, Rish Lakish says that you need to make up the money to the temple that you shorted them, biblically speaking. And Rabbi Yochanan says you need to make it up, biblically speaking. Shmuel. They're arguing about the position of Shmuel. That Shmuel says, let's say you take something that was worth $100 and you want to redeem it, and you from the temple, you redeem it on something that's only worth $1. Shmuel says it's going to be redeemed. Mar is like the Shmuel. So we're going to say into this case that one of the positions that in Torah, that biblically speaking, you don't need to make it up. It's only rabbinic. That's Reish Lakish. He's going to follow the position of Shmuel. And whereas Rabbi Yochanan, who says that biblically speaking, make it up, we're going to say Leis like the Shmuel. He doesn't follow the position of Shmuel, but he's of the position that you can't, that it's not going to be a good redemption. And so therefore, he is going to not agree with Shmuel. Ibai same alternatively, the Koi Alma Isur Shmuel. Both of them, both Rabbi Yochanan, both Reish Lakish and even Rabbi Yochanan, agree with the position of Shmuel that you can redeem something from the temple onto something much less than its value. But we're going to say that this is the nature of the dispute. That the one who says that biblically speaking, you have to make up the difference, where we landed that was the position of Rabbi Yochanan. That's chilul in. That means to say only if you already did it, but you can't do it. But ideally speaking, you can't do it. Umar savar afilu chatchila, whereas Rabbi Yochanan will be in the position that even chatchila you can't do it, and so therefore, even though rabbinically speaking you're allowed to do it, but nevertheless, the Chacham made you pay it back. Gemara then gives another explanation. In the same alternative way to explain it is that the machokas in the Mishnah in Tamura is talking about a case where the difference was a sixth, and you don't have to reverse the positions. Rabbi Yochanan is the one who says that rabbinically speaking, you have to make the money. Reish Lakish says that biblically speaking, you have to. And they're arguing about the position of Rav Chisda. That what did Rav Chisda say? To Amar Mai when our Mishnah says that the hektish and the karka and the avadim do not have the laws of onah, what does it mean that they don't have the laws of price fraud? It doesn't mean, like we initially read it, that there's no laws of onah at all, and so therefore you don't have to return the money. But it means the opposite. Inam betoras onah, meaning to say they don't have the laws of the onah, but they're more strict. Meaning to say that even on top of Nun Zayin Beis, that afilu pachos mechday onah, even if the mistake is less than onah, it's less than a sixth, that by a regular person there is no onah there. It's considered a waiver. By the temple, we're going to say a choser, that you have to return the value of the onah. So Reish Lakish holds like Rav Chisda, and he says that min Torah, that the person who redeems something from the temple onto something that's just a little bit off, even less than a sixth, that biblically speaking has to make up the difference because there's no waiver of anything. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan argues with Rav Chisda, and he says when our Mishnah says that Hakdeshus Ein Lahem Monah means, like we had initially read it, that even if you defrauded the temple by less than a sixth, the sale is valid. And if it is 1/6, then you don't have to return it. But from the position of the rabbis, you have to make up but we also say that if it was greater than onah by betel mekach, then we're going to say, even though biblically speaking, we're going to say that in that case it would be not redeemed. Like Rabbi Yonah said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, betel mekach yesh lehem. So the Gemara says, okay, let's go to the laws of Rav Chisda. What did Rav Chisda say? That these categories are not in the realm of onah, means to say that they're not in the Torah onah. That even less than onah, you have to make up the difference. So the Gemara challenges this from a brisa. And now we're actually moving into the realm of what we're going to be discussing in the next chapter, which is called Ezu Neshach, which is the laws of interest. So Meisvei, we learned in the Brisa, ribis v'ono ahedjot, ve'in ribis v'ono ahekdesh. So it says that there's ribis, there's interest and price fraud as it relates to a regular person, but there's no interest and price fraud as it relates to temple. So we see from here that there's no claim of ona by temple property, whereas according to Rav Chisda, even if it be less than a sixth, you can make a claim of ona by the temple. You just need to make up the difference. Gemara says, no, that's not a proof that there is laws of ona by the case of price fraud. There's no difference here. It's not stronger than the case of our Mishnah. Do kimna b'toras or not? We say when our Mishnah mentions or not means the rubric of ona. Hachinami ribis v'din ono ahedjot. Vein ribis v'din ono ahekdesh. Meaning to say, all this means is that there is interest in the laws of ona for a hedjot, but there's no ribis and din ono ahekdesh. Meaning to say that even by the temple, if it was the overcharge was even less than a sixth, you would need to return the overcharge. Or the Gemara says, Yachi hainu dikatani seifa. But if that's the case, why does the next clause of the Brisa say zechomer behedjot mi behekdesh? That this is one of the areas where the hedjot, where the non-temple is stricter than the temple, and doesn't that imply that there's no ona at all by the temple? Not that the ona takes effect even if it's less than the sixth. Gemara says ribis. That is referred to the ribis. That means to say that the laws of ribis apply to a hedjot, to a non-temple, but they don't apply to the temple. And so with that respect, we're going to say that a regular person is stricter than the laws of the temple because there's no laws of interest with respect to the temple. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, but at least the Brisa could have said that this is an area where the temple is stricter than the regular person by ona, because according to you, the temple is going to have to return, you have to return the overcharge to the temple, even if it's less than a sixth. Gemara says, Hachi hashta. Does that make sense? It makes sense to say that this is one of the areas where the hedjot is stricter than hektish, meaning to say by interest. But ela hektish but by hektish, everything is stricter than hedjot. So we're not going to just say ona because there's so many areas where the temple is stricter than a regular person. So therefore, we're not going to say this by ona because it's just one of many. So the Gemara says, we just said that by the laws of interest, it doesn't apply to the temple. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? Ribis de hektish hechidami. What are we talking about when we say that there's no laws of interest by a hektish? If you want to say the uspe gezbar meya b'meya ve'esrim, if you want to say we're talking about a case that the treasurer of the temple lent out $100 to a regular person, and he says you have to pay me back 120. It can't be that that's what we're referring to. In that case, we say ma'a gizbar. In that case, the treasurer is going to be in violation of misappropriation, because there he lent out something and he didn't immediately get something back. And so therefore, the money wasn't deconsecrated. And even though Me'ila really only takes place when you do it accidentally, here he made a mistake. He thought that he's allowed to do it because the temple is going to make money. But there, since he lent it out, he didn't immediately get something back. We're going to say that that's going to be considered misappropriation. And so since he did something wrong, he did Me'ila, the money was immediately deconsecrated, and it became, and so therefore he has to replace them. And so therefore, it's not considered a loan of hektish at all. And so therefore, it can't be that this is what the Brisa is referring to, because it's not hektish money there, it's schooling money. So Amar Voshaya, Hachamayaskinim. So what we're talking about, what's the Brisa referring to? So when we say that there's no ribis for hektish, we're talking about a case Kigon Shekibo of Lesapek Salasos. So we're talking about a case where the treasurer took money from a specific person, in exchange for this money, he accepted upon himself that the treasurer gave money to a specific person. Let's say he gave him $3, and in exchange for that, or let's say gave him $4, in exchange for that, the man accepted upon himself to bring a solus of flour to of for korban mincha for the whole year. So he says, I'm giving you $5, and or he says, I'm giving you $4, and you have to give me 4 salines worth of flour, me'arba. But they didn't know how much that amount of flour. He says, I'm giving you $4, and you have to give me a selah worth of flour. But they didn't know when they made that deal how much the flour would be worth. And then afterwards, amdu mishalosh. But afterwards, the flour was able to be purchased for 3. So with respect to the hedjot, means to say we have that we say that this is going to be considered a form of interest, that you're paying somebody for a product and the product could go down, and then you ended up giving him more money because he's getting the money at the beginning of the year and he's going to have to supply the flour, and it can end up being that he's basically supplying more flour than the money he got. And so therefore, for that reason, he's giving, in exchange for getting the money early, he's giving the flour cheaper. And so really he's giving 4 seah worth of selah for the price of 3. And so therefore, that's going to be considered like interest. But so even though for a regular person, that's going to be prohibited, but by hektish, it's permitted. And so about this, the Brisa is saying that there's no onah for hektish. Keditnan. And the Gemara says that you're allowed to do this for hektish. We'll prove it to you, like we learned in the Mishnah in Shkolim. Somebody says, I'm going to give soles of flour for 4 seah, for a selah, v'amdu mishalosh, and then the price of the flour went up, and you can only get this amount for 3, meaning to say that you get this amount for basically by paying that, and you get 3 seah for the selah, not 4. And so, but he paid for 4 seah for the selah. So misapek me'arba. So still, the temple, you're going to get the value of 4 seah for the selah, and not 3. V'amdu me'arba, misapek me'arba. But let's say he accepted 3 seah and it went up to 4 seah, meaning to say the price of the flour went down. Misapek me'arba. You have to give him the 4 under those circumstances, because sheyada hektish al yona, the temple always gets the upper hand. So meaning to say we're not concerned about interest in this case, and the temple gets the upper hand. Our Papa says, let me give you a different explanation of what do we mean when we say that there's no interest by the temple. Here we're talking about cases of stones that were given to the treasurer to build a temple, and the stones were not yet consecrated. And so therefore, when the treasurer lent them out, he didn't commit me'ilah. And the Brisa is saying that he's allowed to lend them out with interest. And the reason why, the reason is because the stones are given to the treasurer before they were hektish, kedishmol. The Amar Shmuel, bonin bechol, v'ach kach makdishin. That the stones in the temple, you don't build them from holy stones, because we have to be concerned that while you're building, the workers will rest from the stones, like they'll sit on it. And so therefore, bonin bechol, we build these stones with stones of a regular person, and only afterwards do we consecrate the stone. So that's how Rav Papa says that in that case, that we're not going to say that the laws of ribbis don't apply. We're going to say the laws of the ribbis don't apply, that you're allowed to get interest for lending them out. So now the Mishnah said that avodim shtarm karkokos hekdeshos, the laws of kefil don't apply. Meaning, say if you steal them, you don't pay double. Menanim, what's the source for this idea? That the Brisa says, "I'll call devar pesha." It says if you steal something, that's a general rule. Klal, al shorach hamar, al sell sama, that's a prat. Al kol avadah sher yomar, that's a chazar klal. Klal prat to klal. When you have a general followed by specific, follow a general. Yet the dana okay, prat. You follow the specific. Ma prat meforish davar metal tov agufo money. Just like the prat, something that could be moved and is intrinsically money. I've called davar metal tov agufo money. So the laws of kefil, paying double plots, something that's movable, that's intrinsically money. Yatsu karkal shein metal excludes real estate. It's not movable. Yatsu avadim shuluk shuluk karkos. It releases slaves from this. They're comparable to real estate. it releases contracts that even though they're movable, ain't gufon money. They're not intrinsically money, like we said in yesterday's daf. And if they shows, and we exclude real temple to Amar because the pasuk says, Re'eu v'lo hektish, to his friend and not to his hektish. And also, lo tashumi arba v'chamisha, we don't pay 4 or 5 times the amount nighttime. But tashumi arba chamisha, amar rachman, lo tashumi shlosha v'arba, because since there's no kafel to them, because we just exclude them from kafel, it has to be exactly 4 or 5 times the amount and not 3 or 4 times. And so therefore, it's going to not apply there. Shomer chinam eno nishba. So also, we learned in the Mishnah that if a person was a watchman for free, then he doesn't swear to the fact that wasn't negligent by a slave, a shtaros, contract, a karka, and hectaceous. What's the source of this idea? When you give something to your friend to watch, that's a klal. Kesefo kelim, that's a prat. Chazer a klal prat. And then it says v'gunam beis ish, that's chazer klal. It gives another general klal, prat klal, yetadanel, kina prat. Ma prat. Just like the specific is mefurish davar metaltav gufam mamni. I've called davar metaltav gufam mamni. So it's movable and is intrinsically money. Yatsu karkal shena metaltam. Yatsu avadim shuk shul karkos. Yatsu shtar shal pish metaltam and gufam money. So again, we're going to exclude real estate, contracts, and avadim. Hekdesh samakra reyeo v'lo shel hekdesh. So again, we exclude hekdesh because it's not ireyeo. Also, the notes say sachar. If somebody who's a hired worker doesn't pay, he doesn't have to pay if the avadim, the stars, the karkos were stolen. But immediately, what's the source? The Gemara says, the Tan Rabban, again, we're going to learn this from a Bryce. It says, Kitin Hishal Re'eu, Klal. Hamor Shor said, that's a prat. Kol Be'em Lashmor Chazer Klal. Klal Prat, the Klal, Yetadan Al Kain, a prat, just like the prat in the first Davar Metaltav Gufam Mammon. Kol Davar Metaltav Gufam Mammon, Yatsu Karkos, and a Metaltav, and you exclude real estate. Metaltal Yatsu Avadim Shuk Shal Karkos Yatsu Shtar Shal Pish Metaltal and Gufam Mammon and Akdesho Samakra Re'eo V'lo Shal Hakish. Okay, and that is today's beautiful daf. And so if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address.